Hey everybody, today we're going to do something different. We're going to build another bow using slingshot surgical tubing. This comes in handy for a guy like me who's got junk for a left shoulder. I can't hold my hand out in front of me with any real weight in it like an actual bow, and I can't pull the string back. My shoulder just collapses on me and I can't do it. So what we can do with this is we have something that doesn't require a lot of power to pull back, yet it really accelerates that arrow very well and can give us a pretty good shot. So we're going to go ahead and make this thing, and we're going to make it out of a piece of aluminum tubing. And I'm going to show you how in just a minute. Okay, so this is our aluminum tubing that we're going to use. It's just hardware store aluminum, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a bend in each end of it. Now, aluminum is very difficult to bend. You can't bend it by hand. If you do, what happens is that the tube will collapse and it'll kink. So the answer to that is to use a pipe bender, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Okay, we're going to take this and we're going to just kind of hook it inside the bender like that, and then we're going to pull down on it, and that's going to put a kick in that pipe for us. Now it's stiff, so you kind of got to work with it a little bit until you get it where you want it. Now what I'm shooting for is about 90 degrees from the vertical post, okay, to here. Now I'm doing it by hand this way because if I put it on the ground and try and pull the bender around, it's going to tend to flatten the end of the tube, and I don't want to do that yet. So here's what we're going to keep working at it like this until we get our roughly 90 degrees out of it, and then we're going to kick it around and do the other end. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Now without the bender, like I said, what's going to happen is the tube's just going to collapse and it doesn't give us what we want. Now one of the things that's going to be important is that when you line this up, okay, you want to make sure that your kick is straight with your other kick. Now what I mean by that is that there isn't any twist in it. Otherwise you're going to end up being funny when you try to fire the arrow. Alright, so we're in about the same place. So down we go. Okay, I think we're about there. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to give us a little bit of area here that we can use, that we can run that arrow past it. Okay, so we're going to go from there with this. Now, if you want, you can maybe kick it a little further, but I do want to show you this, is even though I used the bender, this tube actually did collapse a little bit right here. It started to kink, and that's why aluminum is so difficult to bend. Okay, now when I stretched the tubing out from one end to the other, I found that there's very little drop here, which that's going to make the arrow tend to kick sideways very hard. So I'm going to have to put a little bit more arc in this, but I'm not going to bend where I bent before. I'm going to move the bender in and kick it in a different place, and that will improve the amount of bend on it without putting me in a situation where I kink the pipe any further. Okay, so we're going for that same concept of we're pushing it until we get about 90 degrees of bend between the vertical of the handle, okay, and the horizontal of the top bar that we're cutting, that we're bending, the piece we're bending. And that's how we're going to do it. So we need to get this in about the same place. So what I'm going to do is kind of eyeball it and figure out, well, I've got about that much is where I parked my bender. So we're going to now take it around to the other side, okay, and pretty much do the same thing. We're going to slip it in there, and then I'm going to check and see if I'm at about the right place, which it does not look like I am. So, alright, that's got us about there, and we're going to see if we can't put this kick in here too. Now I know I said this before, but you got to be very careful when you're bending aluminum pipe not to go too far, because whenever you do, this stuff's got a bad habit of kinking and collapsing. And so that gives us our arc. So from here we should be able to string this thing and do all the rest of the stuff we have to do. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to take our hacksaw and we're going to kind of clip the end of this at an angle off this way. What that's going to allow is it's going to make it a lot easier to drill these holes through and to mount that rubber through and to be able to put the stops in it so the rubber doesn't pull back out. So I'll show you what we're doing with that in just a minute. Okay, well, cutting this off was kind of a pain in the backside because it was difficult to keep it still. Now I like to do all this stuff with a handsaw, and the reason why I do that is because I want to present something to you that you don't have to buy a bunch of specialty tools to make it happen. So this was cut with a hacksaw, and the way I did it was I pinned it down on a brick, okay, stepped on top of it, and then cut this way with the hacksaw to cut it off. And as you can see, we got both ends and they're pretty straight. They don't have to be perfect on this. What does have to be perfect is that these edges have to be cleaned up so they're nice and smooth. Everything in here, because this stuff, like it is right now, it'll cut you like a knife. So you want to make sure that you either use sandpaper and work it real good, or use a file. Okay, so that's got our ends cleaned up. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to bore the holes to put our elastic bands in for our bowstring. Okay, so we have drilled our holes, okay, in the end, that we can put our tube through. Alright, now you're going to make the hole about the same diameter as the tube, because what we put now inside of here, which I'll show you in a moment, is going to swell this end up to the point where it can't pass back through that hole. I'll demonstrate that in just a few minutes. So what we want to do now is stick one end through one of these holes and get maybe about an inch. Okay, that gives us plenty to tie to. And then we're going to come down to the other end. Okay, well, we're actually going to put both ends through one hole. Alright, once we get this through, we're going to pull this across the opening until we've got just a slight amount of tension on it, just so it's there. Alright, and that's going to give us our string, our bowstring. Now, once we put the pocket, or the rope in between that's going to be able to knock to the arrow, that's going to shorten these up just a little bit. So having it this long, it should give you plenty of material to do what you need to do. Alright, now after you've got your single band cut to the right length, now you're going to want to cut it in half because you're going to need two pieces. And probably the easiest way to do that is to just fold this, take a sharp knife, and it's done. That easy to cut. You're all set. Now you've got both halves of what's going to be your bowstring. Okay, so I happen to have some of these little quarter 20 round head screws laying around. The head of this screw is large enough that it won't quite fit through this hole. Okay, so that makes it ideal for what we're going to do with it. What we're going to do with this thing is we're going to slip it up inside the end of the tube about that far, just about to where the threads are completely inside the tube. And then we're going to take a tie wrap and we're going to clamp it down on this nice and tight so it doesn't pull out. Now, of course, that's going to happen after this has been passed through here. Okay, and we're going to do that on all four corners, and I'll show you what it's going to look like when we're done. One thing I forgot to mention, the best and easiest way to get this to slide up inside the tube is to put something like soap and water on it, like dishwashing liquid or something like that. It'll slip right up in there then. If you try to do it dry, it's not going to want to go. You know what I always say about South Florida, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes because it'll change. The sun just came out, it's been overcast all morning, but now it's turning into a very nice day. So, as I told you, we are going to slip some bolts up into the inside of the tubing, and as you can see, that leaves us a nice swelled up space. Now remember, make sure that your tube is through your bow frame first, okay? Now, we're going to pull them out like that so we can get to them, make it easy for us. And then we're going to take a tie wrap, and we're going to tighten that tie wrap up around the end of that rubber tube that's sticking out over the top of the threads. Now that's going to cause it to dig into those threads and prevent this tube from that screw from pushing back out through the end of the tube. It'll lock it in place very, very tightly. Now, pull hard and you'll get a good solid feel on it. Now myself, I have this little tool. It's called a tie wrap puller that I'm going to put on it, and it's going to pull it even tighter. Okay, and it also cuts it off flush, so you got no problem. So we're going to do that to all four corners of this, and then we're going to make the bowstring that goes between the two elastic bands, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Now I saved the last tie wrap because I wanted to show you a way that you could get these really tight like I did with the tie wrap puller, only with a pair of pliers. It's not hard to do. Let me show you this little trick and we'll go from there. Alright, first we put our tie wrap in place and we snug it up. Alright, now if we take our pliers and we grab it up close, okay, so it's right up against that square box part, and you just kind of twist it a little bit like that and keep moving it up and twisting it again. Move it up, twist it again. It's going to tighten that thing up really, really tight. Now, I'm going to show you a way to cut this off so that it doesn't have a sharp edge that can nick your hand. Again, grab it with the pliers up close to the square part and then just simply start twisting it around. And what'll happen is it'll take that tie wrap right off the end and you don't have any sharp corners to hurt yourself on. Simple as that. Now we've got our rubber bands in place, okay? And we're now, if you'll notice, they don't quite meet in the middle. Not quite. Okay, you got to kind of stretch them before they're going to meet in the middle. Now if this is too loose, okay, and you find it doesn't work well, you can always take one of these back out, cut it off, put the bolt back in deeper, and shorten these tubes up. But remember, whatever you do to the top tube, you have to do equally to the bottom tube. So if you take 1 inch off here, take 1 inch off the other pair of bands as well. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to tie a knot that you'll be able to put a piece of rope between these two ends, and that will help to grip the arrow, so you can fire it out of this bow like you would any conventional bow. Okay, this is parachute cord, and we are going to use this to make our string that goes between our four bands, our four rubber bands. Okay, so I expect I'm going to be just a little bit too long on this at the end of it, so we're probably going to have to trim it, which is good because that way I can show you how to do that as well. So what we're going to tie is a knot called a bowline or bowline. Okay, now the way a bowline is tied, you make kind of a loop, okay, like that. All right, and now you take this free end. All right, now we're going to move it up a little bit so I've got enough so I can really show you this the easy way and not have to fight it. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it up through this loop that we just made. Okay, we're going to wrap it around the running end of the string, okay, and then we're going to stick it back down through that hole. We're going to hold it in place, and we're going to start tightening up all these loops to the size that we think we want. Okay, so yeah, that's fine there. This one has to go this way. Now we're going to need, because this part is what we're going to be using, we're going to need to tighten this up quite a bit and make it so that the hose is going to fit through this hole. Okay, now this one right now is useless because I did not tie it around the rubber tube. So I'm going to untie this and I'm going to do it again. But I wanted to show you how to tie the knot. Now this knot, it supports itself. When you pull one, it tightens up all the others, and this knot will not slip. It will not come out. It's called a bowline. One place you can find a bowline is in the Boy Scout manual. Okay, I know, I'm telling you about the Boy Scouts. You may not want to know about them, but that is a place where you can find it. So we're going to take this end, we're going to slip it around. We're going to come up through the hole. We're going to go around the running end, and we're going to stick it down through that hole again, and then we're going to tighten it all up like that. Okay, and once we get this nice and tight, we have a slip-proof knot. This knot, as I said, won't slip. The more you pull on it, the tighter it gets, and it just is not going to come off of there. So that's what you want. Now, once we get one side done, we're going to cut this parachute cord off so we've got enough to tie the other end. Okay, and then we're going to go from there. Now, this cord is made of nylon. Now, nylon melts, so it's important that when you cut this off, it also frays a lot. So in other words, we're going to take a lighter and we're going to burn the ends of this so that it melts together into like almost an adhesive mass where it sticks the end of this together so it doesn't come unfrayed. Alright, and that's all we got to do is just burn the ends of it. Now, I want to warn you, don't let go of this thing too quick on these pieces of burnt rope, because it's molten plastic, it's really hot, and it'll stick to your flesh and take the flesh with it when you pull it back off. So make sure you hold it long enough for it to get good and cool. Okay? In other words, don't let it kind of spring and slap against your hand. Alright, so let me take my cord here and tie it back up so it doesn't get lost. Okay? And then we're going to take this around to the other side, and we're going to tie the other side of this string. Now, you want to try and get this kind of centered in the loop as best you can. It will, over time, naturally center itself to a degree anyway, but you want to try and make it as good as you can. So, we're going to make our loop. Now remember, you're going to want enough string in between here that you can not only comfortably fit your arrow on it, but get your fingers on the string so you can pull the string back. So try to leave yourself enough room to get that done. Alright? So, as we did before, okay, we're going to make our loop. We're going to stick that end through here. Alright? And that end is now, going to go up through the hole. Okay. Alright, now I went backwards. Alright, I've got my loop backwards. So we're going to turn it over the other way, like that. And wrap it around. Okay, it's going to go up through the hole. Okay. Around this end. Okay. And then back down through that hole again. And once it's all the way through, now we can tighten this knot up, and once it's tight, it is not going anywhere. That thing is just as solid as can be. You can really pull on it and it won't come apart. Now, as I thought was going to be the case, it's too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a couple of inches out of each side. Alright? So I think we're going to start with about that much right there. Okay? So we're going to cut off about that much. Okay? Because this is pretty loose right now. But here's the thing, if you have to fight this thing when you're trying to tie that bowstring in there, you're going to be happy. It's going to be a pain in the neck. So we're going to cut that off. And then we're going to take our tie wrap and cut it off and reuse our bolt. So we're going to do that in just a second. Okay, probably the easiest way to get one of these off is just take a pair of side cutters like you had in your pliers earlier and just kind of clip it like that, and it popped right out of there. Now from here we can just kind of work that bolt back out of our tube like that. As you can see, since you can push it out backwards like that, that's why it's important to have that tie wrap on there. If you don't have that tie wrap on there, it's going to be a problem. You may have to put more soap on this before you put it through here, but we're going to try to do it without it because it may still be kind of slippery. Now the thing about the soap is that the soap, when it dries, actually makes this pretty sticky on here and also prevents it from backing out. So now the only thing we have left is to get another 2 tie wraps and do these ends. Okay, it's time to test fire this puppy. There's our target. Here's our bow, here's our arrow. Let's see if I can actually hit the target. Like that. There you go. So I think this is actually still a little bit loose. I'm not getting as much power out of it as I want to. And by tightening it up a little bit, I think I can get a little bit more out of it. Also, I think I want to go ahead and wrap a handle on this thing so that my hand is in a consistent place so that when the arrow comes across, it's lined up properly instead of somewhere else. So those are going to be the next 2 things I'm going to do. I'm not going to do this part on camera because it's time consuming. I might show you how, but I'm not going to just take you through all of the wrappings. So we'll go from there. Alright, so I told you I was going to show you how to wrap this handle. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but I am going to show you how to get it done. The first thing you're going to need to do is make a loop of string, okay, like this. Alright, you just fold a piece over and tie the ends together in a single knot and you've got what you need. So this is going to lay onto the bow, alright, and you're going to start by putting a little bit inside of the handle, okay, and then the string is going to wrap over the top of it, alright, and you're going to keep on wrapping it and wrapping it and wrapping it, okay, right up against each other. And as you do that, okay, it's going to produce a handle for you that's going to be comfortable and easy to hold, okay. So this process is time consuming, and I made this a little bit too long, but what will happen is when we get to the end, we're going to cut it off, we're going to slip it through this knot, and then this knot is going to pull it back through the handle and pull it underneath itself. So it ties itself off and is enclosed in the whole handle. I'll show you it when we're done, and I think you'll understand better exactly what I'm talking about. Alright, so as you can see, we pulled our string back and that tucked this loose end up underneath the windings themselves, so it's nice and tight, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. Normally I would pull this all the way through, but unfortunately this rope got a little twist in it and it ended up with a knot, and the knot is caught under here and I can't get it all the way out. So I'm just going to cut the end of it off because it'll be fine. And that's going to give me a nice comfortable handle on my new bow. So there we go. Now I took off another about 3 inches on each end to tighten the string up, so I've got a little bit more draw pull on it and it should shoot a little better now. So I'm Bill 1911. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at askbill1911.com.